Hello, I am Elizabeth Buckley. I would like to talk about the foundation for well-woven tapestry cloth. There are two primary components. The first is an evenly tensioned warp, and the second is equal spacing between each warp thread. After you have ensured that each individual warp thread has the same tension on it all the way across the entire width, next comes equalizing the spacing. And for this, we weave the heading. Different tapestry traditions approach weaving the heading in different ways. Here is how I like to do it on my basse-lisse low warp Aubusson loom. The tools I am using are a flat stick shuttle, an awl, a grattoir, and an Aubusson bobbin, otherwise known as la flûte. First, I start weaving 4 rows of doubled strands of the 12-12 cotton seine twine warp. This I have wound onto a flat shuttle for ease of passing through the shed. I use the grattoir to pack the weaving close to the knots. At the selvage, I leave a loop of about 1 inch. This provides extra slack for later use. Next, I weave 4 rows with a single warp thread of the 12-12 cotton seine twine. This I have wound around an Aubusson bobbin. I work in about 1 inch increments. My left hand selects the next section of warp, and my right hand sends the bobbin through that section. Then I use my fingers to tap the thread down. As I weave, I make bubbles that are hilly to make sure that there is plenty of slack around each warp thread. Again, at the selvage, I leave a loop of about 1 inch to provide extra slack for later use. The reason why I am weaving with the same weight of cotton seine twine that I used for my warp has to do with the size of the spaces between each warp thread. Generally, French tapestry cloth has a ratio where the diameter or thickness of the warp equals the spacing between each warp thread. This is why I am using the warp thread as weft in my heading. Another reason has to do with needing a firm base against which I will be packing the weft, pushing it down firmly. Here I am using the awl to begin shifting the warps. It is best to begin in the middle and work toward the edges of the warp. I push the threads that are too close together further apart, and the threads that are too far apart closer together. To anchor the adjustments, I push down the woven area with the awl. This warp will have an overall set of 10 ends per inch with the 12-12 weight of cotton seine twine across a 60-inch width. Here at the edge, I need to move the warps into the loops of the extra slack area I left previously when weaving. Now I am ready to twine. I begin on the second warp thread with the midpoint of the twining thread. I will use the warp on the very edge as a guide thread while I weave. This provides a visual guide for keeping the selvage straight. I am using the same weight of cotton seine twine as my warp. This one row of twining will lock the spacing in place and keep the woven tapestry from unraveling once it is completed and cut off the loom. Since my warp is 60 inches wide, I will need a thread length of 180 inches to twine, or 3 times the width of the warp. Because it is such a long length of thread, I have wound each end onto a bobbin for ease of use. With the twining completed, I now check to make sure that the twined edge or the fell line is square to the selvage. And now the warp is ready for weaving.